everyone, welcome to Talking Tech. I'm Caroline Hill, and we are here to reflect on a very long, amazing 2025. I'm here with Jenifer Swallow, who many of you will know is a strategic advisor to tech companies and other public and private organisations. She's former general counsel at the fintech unicorn Wise, former CEO of government-backed organisation Law Tech UK, among many other things. Hi, Jenifer.
Hey Caroline, hey everyone.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
And at the end of another year, so you and I spoke at the end of last year, and so thank you so much for joining me again. I thought it would be really fun to reflect on 2025, maybe have a little bit of some future gazing to 26. But first of all, to look back at some of the things we talked about a year ago. So we said that 2024 was an ethical wake-up year for the legal profession, and that 2025, aka this past year, would be the year we get out of bed. How do you think that's? Do you think have we got out of bed this year?
Get out of bed on ethics this year? I think there's a lot of talking from a reclining position. Shall we call it that? I mean, if we reflect again where we were when we had our last chat, it was just post the closing of the post office inquiry. So closing arguments had just finished when Williams had just done his wrap up, and we were like, everyone take a breath. Oh my gosh, there's lots of coverage in the press. And of course, press cycles wane, and don't they? And it was very interesting to see a flurry at the beginning of the year in 25. You couldn't move for a newsletter from the law firms to the general counsel community talking about what needed to be done, etc. But I'm not sure everybody got out of bed for ethics. There's been some really interesting work done. I mean, Professor Moorhead's work and his team on the post office project, and lots of other pillars of work, his Hamlin lectures, etc., Flora Page's work, etc. But no, we're not quite there yet. But I mean, next year, so we've had volume 1 of Wynne Williams' report in June. We're going to get volume 2, which will be the final really chunky one, which really goes, which should include law firms and in-houses. And that's at some point early next year. So we'll see. Do people get out of bed in 26 for it? Maybe.
Has there been any change? You talked about this. This is more, I'll be honest, this is more your world. Obviously, it's all of our worlds, and the post office scandal was all of our worlds, and all of the things are all of our worlds. And just mean in terms of expertise, this is very much. I'm slightly on the periphery, but so you reference but obviously super important, for everybody, it underpins everything. I write about legal technology, and it underpins everything that we do. Our standing on the global stage, the global perception of us underpins absolutely everything that we do. You mentioned that the UK fell in the corruption perception index last year. And has there been any change or any update?
We were at 19, I think. No, we're flat. Okay. So we have done nothing as a jurisdiction to raise ourselves out of those doldrums. And I think this is a really important topic. I mean, obviously, we're tech fans as well, and of course, the AI agenda and AI governance, responsible AI, or RAI, I think is definitely picking up. All of this sort of idea of the label of experimental technology. I think that has fallen away, or is certainly falling away. Like the professionalism, the requirements of insurance, the governance around AI. I think there's a really interesting crossover with ethics on that angle.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting. I think that when you look at, it's interesting on that front because. I don't know what our standing is in terms of AI governance specifically. So you mentioned insurance. I know that's definitely something that's been coming up on my radar, but that's a slightly separate point. But so I know, I guess we have to potentially be careful what we say, but obviously, the United States is taking one point, which is a sort of complete, perhaps different polar end to Europe, and then the UK. It's interesting as to where we stand. I don't know if I haven't seen a huge amount of progress. Would that be fair to say this year?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a sort of everybody in a frozen position like this, not daring to move. And I do think that is really interesting. What has been noted, though, is the UK did say that it wanted to be the leading jurisdiction for AI assurance in terms of service provision. I mean, that's one of our fundamentals of our economy, right? Is service provision. So AI assurance is absolutely fundamental. What, you know, being able to advise organizations on how to do AI responsibly, well, what the right controls are, etc. The fact that the UK has presented a potential growth opportunity is interesting. But of course, as you say, when the regulatory environment is in such flux, or rather stasis, I mean, let's see what happens in the US next year, right? Of course, you know, California and other states versus the administration. We'll see who wins. I thought it was interesting that Trump recently said that when he sued the BBC, that perhaps it was AI that they had used. So I don't know if personal experiences like that will have any bearing on or any balance to the economic impact that he's obviously seeing from encouraging investment in AI. But yes, I mean, obviously the power is that Europe responded with a delay, of course. Europe said, oh, well, maybe we'll just pause because we might be inhibiting innovation. And that's been the age-old challenge, right? Is how do you balance responsibility with risk-taking?
Yes, I do think I've seen, you know, Europe is obviously thinking about its position because it's such a competitive, naturally, like the first port of competition now, isn't it? And you know, you're really starting to inhibit if it's trying to find that balance between, you know, this uncharted water still, I think, and then facilitating competition, which is actually going to be, you know, a massive differentiator, and for us, for the legal profession, for law firms and the profession as a whole, in terms of our standing, it's a massive area.
But isn't it interesting as well? Like, while there's all this fluffing about on the world stage, China's just cracking on. Yeah. China already has all of it's all there, and obviously a completely different cultural environment and economy and growth environment, and how you can make money in China. But I do think that's an interesting counterbalance to it all. And I think from a law firm and a relevance, I mean, everybody is battling for the race to it's really the race to relevance right now. AI alone is not enough. So what are going to be those things that will differentiate organizations in the market? And is it that actually we will return to trust, that trust is more than just having a human in the loop, watching a process? There are, you know, more fundamental elements that people consider when they trust an organization with their legal service advice and all of the rest of it. So I think that side of things interesting too. I do feel that there's a bit of a potential for a backlash, and I suspect that in 2026 we will see some massive disasters around AI. There will be some big cyber stuff, there'll be some big societal stuff that happens where people just go, literally, what is this? What is happening? What is needed? And maybe those cycles will have an impact on how we perceive and then how we deploy.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's interesting because so we've obviously had a lot of focus for years now on hallucination, and that's been the big fear, you know, the outbreak. And I think that maybe this year has been the year when you know, we've seen the awareness growing that actually there's so much more. People should be thinking about there are so many more concerns in terms of the points of risk and the points of failure. You know, as to, you know, so I think that there's been a big awakening personally. You talked actually last year, you said about using AI for governance as a trend we see more of, which is sort of the other half of that.
Yes, good shout.
I don't know if that was something. Did you see more of that this year?
I actually have seen a lot more of that this year. That's been pretty normal now, to have an AI system running whatever your standards are, AIPP, NIST, whatever the elements are that you're running for your governance, to have a system that's tracking that for you is very normal. And I think that's only going to grow with multi-agent systems, where you're going to have multiple, and that's standard in outside of law and in normal tech, and the other ways that agents are being deployed just in business, is to have tech checking the homework of other tech. I mean, I do that in my own. If I'm working on something and doing some research, I get one model to check the homework of another model. It's not rocket science. But to have built that into a process flow, I do think we're going to see more of that. And then the adjacent element to that is being able to see it working, which, back to that trust thing, is okay, well, I can't just trust the outcome at the end. I want to be able to interrogate and see that.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I've seen that as well. And there's still sort of on the agentic side, there's been some obvious progress. It's still I'd say early doors, but the demos that I've had of some really great agentic tech, they have had done exactly that on the right hand pane. And actually that's much better than that black box. So people have a fear a little bit about agentic technology in terms of losing control, but actually what's so interesting where you do have that process down this process mapping is the wrong word, but where you see it laid out before you, it's much better, right?
You can eye scan it.
Right, you can actually say, because before you it wasn't always clear how you get to a certain result, but now that seems to be that there's much more transparency.
Even then though, and I agree, even then though, and this is why I think our own internal systems, as well as the governance that we wrap around our actual physical systems, is so important. Like the lethargy that can be introduced into your intellectual processes is awful. You can just be like, oh yeah, I'm sure that's right. Like, no, check it. That's the thing. I don't know if that's the human condition is to default to comfort, but it's a very comforting thing. And I think that's part of it, is that discipline, which then goes to the other side of it, which all the law firms and in-houses are doing, which is making sure that there is active engagement. Lots of people are doing sort of digital enablement and upskilling to make sure people are thinking those thoughts. Watch your own psychology when you're using these tools. And then of course there's all the stuff around. We had a little burst, didn't we, over the last couple of months around prompt injections, and how terrifying the new methodologies of manipulation actually are. Like just the idea that you can put white text into a PDF document that people can't see, and that white text will inform the prompt of your drafting tool, so that it will say, don't point out that this liability provision is one-sided. And then if you're in a methodology of like comfort, you'd be like, oh, well, I haven't read it myself, so it's fine. And then, negligence. So all of that too.
Yes. Post ILTACON, I think that came up quite a lot at ILTACON. Well, maybe not enough actually. I think I spoke to the CIO of BCRP who after ILTACON said that that's the sort of thing that people need to be thinking more about, and actually following some of the things. I think I've seen people become more perhaps thinking about frameworks. You already mentioned NIST, in terms of how you really start to build in that muscle and continuously check and make people responsible actually. So at our 30th event, so we had someone from Herbert Smith Freehill Kramer, it's all such a mouthful, talking about I paused for a minute. I got it right. To talking about how they're building a framework across the entire firm, mapping out their AI risk across the whole of the enterprise, and making people responsible for certain points. And it's a very complex, particularly with a firm of that size, exercise. But it's about being absolutely systematic. And we had a lot of conversations about whether you should be following certain frameworks, whether people are looking at NIST very closely. I think that's something.
NIST is a great one, and also NIST has just done a whole bunch of stuff around quantum and the fact that we need to be anticipating, because I mean the investment in quantum is, I don't know, 50th of the investment in AI, but it's growing at double the rate. Right. So we are absolutely precipitating breakthroughs in quantum computing. And so when you're following a system like NIST, you're going to also get the horizon scanning part that firms, I think, find difficult. It is hard. Like, how the hell do you keep up? So yes, following systems like that. But of course, then you can end up with default. You're like, okay, well, it's fine. We're following NIST, so it's okay. But actually, there's all sorts of emerging and context-specific risks that you need to be aware of. I think, one of the interesting second-order impacts of where we are with AI right now might also be standardization. You were just talking about processes, and it made me think about how the whole point of agentic, or the opportunity of agentic, is to take over processes and smooth friction out of things. But for that, it's not just about a tool doing it. It's about restructuring, re-architecting the whole process, the system around the tool. And I think that's interesting too, when you think then about how you're baking governance in and how you're systematizing. We may end up inadvertently, we will end up inadvertently perhaps, but as a second order impact, that we standardize a lot of the stuff we do, a lot of the documents we do, data structured, And then that means the law overall just becomes less complicated, more simple. I think that's really interesting from a longer trajectory perspective.
It's just fascinating. So I mean, I suppose I guess in light of time we need to go to the future, but just but as to whether next year maybe we will see. I feel like maybe there's so many conversations that are going on now. We've talked about standardization in different contexts, and it's within the law profession for lots of different reasons. It's quite hard to achieve. We've talked about the billable hour. I must have talked about the billable hour about 10 million times this year. I feel like
pricing playbooks. Yeah.
One thing you said that was quite interesting. Before I'll pick your brains on maybe couple of things that you think we'll see next year so that we can then revisit. But so you said something interesting at BLTF. You said, and I really liked this, so British Legal Technology Forum, where obviously you chaired one of the main stages. You said if you want people to use technology, you need to stop talking about technology. Do you think is, I mean, I know, and if that is the case, then I'm screwed, because all I do is talk about technology.
But you talk about technology so we can stop talking about technology, though. That's the whole point.
Do you think you said, and I think your point was we need to become more think more about behavioral science, and actually I've seen some really interesting things around adoption. I've seen firms doing some quite cool stuff around, so Linklater's created AI lawyers, and there's all sorts of quite interesting new things. Do you think it's right? Do you think that we need to focus more on that?
I think we need to focus on people.
Yeah.
So behavioral science is about people. So the answer to the question is yes, but really it needs to be about people. The law is about people. Business is about people. Making money is about people. Why would you do anything at all in the law in terms of innovation? The only answer is people, because people need it. And there is no shortage of legal work in this world. The GC community is creaking under the strain. There's so much complexity, so much change. There's no shortage of work that needs to be done, and I think we just need to focus on getting it done in the most effective, efficient, value generating way possible. And we should deploy every single tool in our armory to do that. And AI is one of those things, but I just think this obsession about it as an individual thing gets you thinking about the wrong thoughts. We should be thinking about what is it that we're trying to do? What is it that clients need? And that's the thing that I loved when I was working inside tech companies. It's one of the things I love the most about working with tech companies is they obsess about their customer. And we simply do not have that in the legal community in the way that the tech community does, but it's growing. In order to deliver a great SaaS product as a law firm, you have to obsess or just to productize a workflow in a way that a client loves. You have to work with the client. You have to do collaboration. So I think that's the opportunity.
I think so. We've seen collaboration tools for a long time. With the new AI tools, I think there's been some quite cool sort of developments in that space that are facilitating collaboration, facilitating knowledge sharing. And it's funny because everyone's like, oh, it's new. We're like, it's not new, but it's just new. It's not new. We've been doing it for a while.
And also, you don't really need a tool for that, for collaboration. Although the stuff about leverage it, for example, even just leveraging your data as a client, that's you as a law firm are holding vast amounts of my data. I want to be able to leverage that. We should be able to collaborate in doing that. And obviously platforms support that and all of the foundational work to enable that to happen. But this is collaboration is like, that's the golden age. That was the beginning of time. We should just bring that back. And actually, it is interesting, though. I do think next year we will see, because law firms are trying to get relevance, right? So we've seen a lot of, tie-ups with Harvey, lots of trying to have something to say. And those collaboration that is driving collaboration. That these lots of announcements. I think we're going to see lots more announcements about collaborations and tie-ups and JVs and things like that as people strive for relevance. I'm putting my money on that one for next year as one small start.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say including vendors, right? So
of course,
creating the platform. Obviously,
absolutely. Absolutely that. Yes.
So sorry. Yeah. So 2026. Yeah. Tell me your get your crystal ball.
I think that I feel like the other thing that firms are going to see is in-houses increasingly insourcing. So I reckon we're going to see 10 to 20% of work just disappear from a law firm point of view as in-houses become more sophisticated. And that has its own, dynamics and implications around it. And it won't be sort of particularly spoken about. It will just happen.
Is that from the people you're speaking to, is that because they're becoming more tech savvy and they're realizing they can do a lot of this themselves?
Yes, they've built their own legal ops function. That legal ops function has been developing over the last couple of years, and now they're at a point where they've deployed a various number of pilots and developing systems, and they're like, well, okay, we're just not going to run that by a law firm anymore. Those types of low-level works, our contract review, etc., we're just going to do that in-house. Regulatory review, first evaluations, even horizon scanning, where the law firms were charging, a lot for tools like that. There's now decent tools on the market that they can do it themselves.
Interesting. Despite the whole, and there's not any persuasion around the whole part of it is shifting the liability. It's always been not just about the service.
They will still absolutely. In-houses will still buy an insurance policy for sure on the big stuff. And as I said before, there's no shortage of work. It's just the type of work that in-houses are insourcing and enjoying it, doing the innovation. Yeah, enjoying it. Like, oh my gosh, look what we just did. This is amazing. Really? It's not just about front doors anymore. It's some really great stuff happening in the in-house community.
I have seen, so yes, and it's interesting because I've seen amongst the in-house teams that have got some resource, I've seen some quite fun experiments and they've been celebrating it, on LinkedIn amongst other things. But then I chaired a panel at a conference with 2 GCs, and they were saying, they were different size, they were smaller. Actually, one of them wasn't so small, and they were crying out for law firms to help them more. They were saying, we don't see enough. They were saying we need to help with tech, not just law, and there is a gap for you to provide something more than you are, which includes, and they asked, it was an IT director conference, and they said, put your hands up, and there were CTOs, IT directors in the audience, and they were saying, put your hands up if you've been to a client pitch at all this year, and no one put their hand up.
No,
not one person put their hand up. And they said, well, that's what we need, somebody to come along and so that was fascinating as well. It's like, and I guess that's an opportunity. I mean, maybe in some cases the horse has bolted and they're doing their own thing, but also you think, well, actually there might be space for that, more space for that.
And I would think that would probably be short-lived if there is space for that, because you'll get over that initial hump of not knowing, because you'd have educated yourself somehow.
Yes, well, that came up as well. So
oh, really?
Yes. So you think that all legal, you think, oh, everyone has got, they've got tech awareness, they're a part of clock, whatever. And then, but one of them in particular on my panel was not. But by the end of the conference, she said, I feel like I know enough now, I can do more myself, just by listening to some of the vendor presentations. Oh, wow. So actually, I think I think you're spot on. That there's going to be so much more awareness, whether through clock or just because there's so much more out there.
Couple more wild things. I wonder if this year will be the year. I've been saying this for 5 years, so you don't have to put any money on me. But I wonder if this will be the year that the SRA makes technical competence a requirement of authorization.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Would be interesting, right? Particularly with all of these competence issues with people just not checking citations and things like that. So that's interesting. Yeah. I think maybe it's just tangential, but I think we're going to go mad for robotics in the bigger world in 26.
Okay.
I don't know what impact that's going to have on the law, but there's something massive going to happen in robotics. I have a friend that just spent a bunch of time in China, and she blew my mind with what she was saying. Oh my gosh, like multiple robots in people's houses domestically. Totally normal, like the dark factories that never turn their lights on because the robots are just working. It's something significant happening there for sure.
Thank you for that. So that would be fun next year to see what's come to pass. There's some bold predictions, which I really like. I really like the tech competence. So that would be an interesting one, although that's another one we've been talking about for many years, as you say.
And remember Win Williams' report early next year. Let's see what it says.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks. Well, Jenifer, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Super to see you. Bye-bye.